with that, I will call our September 5th meeting of the MPO Technical Committee to order. First up, I'll ask for a motion and a second on the approval of today's agenda, which was mailed out ahead of time.
This Rudy, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Jeff May, second.
Thank you, Rudy and Jeff. This being a virtual meeting, I'm really going to only ask for any dissenting votes. So if anybody is opposed to the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Next up, item 3, vote on the approval of the August meeting minutes. I did have one question for staff on this. Item 7, the transportation CIP said that it passed. Is that's not my recollection? Am I missing something?
Correct. It did not pass. We'll get that fixed.
Okay. So with the amendment of item 7, just showing that it was shared but there was no motion on that. Do we have a motion and a second on the minutes or any other amendments?
Yeah, this was Mark Miller with the City of Ankeny. It shows that I was not present at the last meeting, but I was, and I, did some motions there. So
We have proof. Thank you, Mark. We'll make sure that's updated.
thank you.
So that's 2 amendments now to the minutes that were in the packet. With those 2 amendments, do we have a motion, a second, or anything else?
This Rudy, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with the amendments.
Second, Mark.
Thank you, Rudy and Mark. Is anybody opposed to the motion? Indicate by saying aye. Hearing no opposition, the meeting minutes are adopted with the 2 amendments. Next up, we have report and vote on Title VI documentation. And Gunnar?
Thank you. This is our something we need to do every 3 years to keep current with our requirements, and we have prepared some draft documentation. There are 2 draft documents that were included in your agenda packet. One goes to Federal Highway, one goes to Federal Transit. If you dug into those, you saw that Federal Transit is much more involved. So before you today is just basically reaffirming the commitment that we have made to Title VI, assuring that no person shall on the grounds of race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be otherwise subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal assistance. So last time we did this was 2021. We were due for an update. So staff did review all the documents. We looked at whether we had any Title VI complaints. There were none. One of the big changes, I should say probably the most notable change, was the planning boundary change that occurred this year. So that had us looking at a slightly wider area for environmental justice areas, demographic profile, and language assistance program. But after all of that, even with a larger planning area, there are really no significant changes to the demographics or language needs. And so the documentation that was in your agenda packets is largely the same in substance as to the documentation that was done in 2021. We did publish public notice soliciting feedback on these documents. We have not received any to date. And our next steps are to ask approval for these documentations from our MPO committees this month, and then we'll submit them to the Iowa DOT. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Gunnar. Any questions for Gunnar? So hearing none, I'll ask for a motion in a second on staff's recommendation.
Motion to approve, Mark.
It's Rudy, I'll second.
Thank you, Mark and Rudy. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Please indicate by saying aye. Hearing no dissent, the motion passes. Next up, we have report and vote on ICAP. Zach, you can take this one?
Yes, thank you. Want to give you an update on the ICAP program. Applications were due back on July 21st or July 31st. We've received 2 applications, which are on the next screen. One of them was from the city of Des Moines for their Southeast 14th Street Adaptive System Control. They're asking for a little bit over $2 million for this project. The second was for an Urbandale-Clive joint project for I-35/80 and US 6 interchange, which they're asking for $2.5 million for. So these are the 2 applications that we have received this year that are before you for your approval. Staff has reviewed them. They are consistent with our long-range plan. We're asking that you make a motion to vote on these today so we can move them forward. Once they are approved at policy this month, we will submit the resolutions on to the project applicants so they can get those in their agenda packets or their application packets that they'll send on to the Iowa DOT. And those applications are due to the Iowa DOT by October 1st. Happy to take any questions you have about the ICAP applications, but otherwise it's before you for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Zach? So we have staff's recommendation that we approve the 2 applications that are shown on the screen. Do we have a motion and a second based on staff's recommendation?
Davis moves as submitted.
Rudy, I'll second.
Thank you, John and Rudy. Now I'll be looking for any dissent. Is anybody opposed to the motion? Hearing none, that item passes. Now I believe we're circling back to the TCIP. Wonderful. Zach? Or Josh? Josh, thank you.
No, you're good. At our last meeting, I presented the initial findings for the Transportation Capital Improvement Program, which is just a subset of projects from our jurisdiction CIPs. At that time, some information from our member communities was not included in the project. We extend our gratitude to those who provided feedback to enhance the project. And based on your input, we have completed gathering data from our member communities, including Pleasant Hill, Polk City, Polk County, and Warren County. We also updated graph labels for further clarification and broke out 2 funding sources from the other category, which are the general fund and local option sales tax. This graph here illustrates the classification of projects within the TCIP. Most projects at 194 are focused on roads and parking modifications or additions, highlighting the area's commitment to improving local infrastructure. This chart here outlines the various funding sources for the region. So the majority is general obligation bonds, which is the most utilized funding lever. Second is TIF, the second most significant source. And then we also have federal and state funds. And then the other sources, which include sewer funds, water funds, and contributions from other municipalities. This graph here just illustrates the annual spending on transportation projects within the Des Moines metro area. Just provides a clear overview of the distribution over the years and the unprogrammed funds as well past 2028. This table here is the updated table on funding allocation in the region, which is broken down by jurisdiction. This now accurately reflects the percentage of allocated funds to each area. We've also revised the title to better represent the data and updated the allocation to include the newly added municipalities since our last meeting. The total funding allocated for transportation-related projects from fiscal year 2025 through fiscal year 2028, also including the unprogrammed funds, is $1,288,000,000. Our next steps is to present this to the executive and policy committees, and the MPO staff recommends voting to receive and file the updated TCIP. I thank you guys for your time and attention, and we welcome any feedback or questions you may have.
Thank you. Josh, one question for me. Is the
Yes.
TCIP, like the format of it, is it the website that was linked?
Yes, so the format is a story map, which includes some writing about what a TCIP is and what's going on in the area with transportation-related projects, and also includes like a map of where all these projects are taking place.
Thank you. Any other questions for Josh? I know last time the comments kind of circled just around some of the things that you mentioned, breaking up the funding sources and then maybe some just double checking of individual communities.
Yep.
I imagine you had a chance to touch base with those communities.
Yes.
Great. If anybody else has any questions, please speak up. Otherwise, I know Josh is looking for approval here, so I'll entertain a motion in a second.
This Rudy, I'll move accepting the report.
Davis, second.
Thank you, Rudy and John. Is there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. And now I think we have some tip amendments. Is
Yes,
this
thank
per
you.
vote, right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
We've got two tip amendments this month for you to consider approval on. The first one is from the city of Altoona. This is for their ITS master plan that received ICAP funding. They received a little over 75,000 in ICAP funding for this project. The total project cost is a little over 94,000. This project was originally programmed in this current tip, this past tip, 2024 tip. But they need to move the project into 25. So the request is to move that project into 25 so that they can expend the funds after October 1st of this year. The second project is from the Iowa DOT. This is a project that's taking place in Ankeny. It's on US 69, 1st Street to Northeast 18th Street. This is also related to ICAP. The total project cost on this is $1.75 million. They need to the ICAP funding that was awarded to this project, which was a little over $1.6 million in ICAP funding, did not get programmed, and so we need to update the project to include that ICAP funding on the project. So that is a request from the Iowa DOT, and those are the two amendment requests we have for you today. Happy to take any questions you have on them, but they are before you for your approval.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions for Zach? I'll entertain a motion in a second on staff's recommendation.
I'll move. This is Steve Neighbor, Des Moines.
This Rudy, I'll second.
Thank you, Steve and Rudy. Any opposed to the motion? Please indicate by saying aye. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Next up, we have item 8, the report on mobilizing tomorrow with Zach.
Thank you. We wanted to give you an update on mobilizing tomorrow and where our draft chapters are at. Staff is in the process of finalizing the draft chapters. We have developed a page on the website. There's a link in your agenda packet to that page. All the draft content will be posted on this page and put out for both comment from our committees as well as comment from the general public. Once all those draft chapters 1 through 4 are posted on the website, we will be releasing them out for public comment. So just as a reminder, we did do a pretty minimal update to our long-range plan this go around. The main changes overall, we're looking at more reformatting, design, layout type changes. Also just cleaning up some of the language, making it more concise, more readable, things of that nature. And then we did have some content reorganization as well. So for example, we reorganized the chapters into transportation mode based rather than how they were in the past. We also moved the measures and the targets. Instead of having their own chapter, we moved them into each one of those mode-based chapters based on whether that target was for that specific mode. So for example, if it was a target that was for roads and bridges, it would go into the roads and bridges chapter. We also in the past had a state of the system appendix, which kind of went over the existing conditions of the system. Again, we moved this content up into those main chapters based on the modes. We also obviously went through and updated any of the data that we needed to. So data related to the growth scenario, for example, or any of the fiscal analysis, as well as the performance measures. Since we have new data for all of those, we did update all the data throughout the plan was re-updated. So on the next slide here, we've got kind of just an overview of what is kind of contained in each one of these chapters. So in chapter 1, it's just the introduction. This currently is the only one that is posted on that link if you go visit it. As I mentioned, the rest of these will be being posted over the next few days. But chapter 1 introduction, that just kind of has a history of transportation planning in our region. It also outlines the vision, mission, and goals that were in the LRTP. This is another content change where we shifted this up from a chapter that was dedicated specifically to the goals and put it into the introduction chapter. It also outlines any of the connections that this plan has with other regional and statewide plans. And then it provides an overview of what all content is included in the LRTP. Chapter 2 is the roads and bridges. I would say probably this is like the main section of the plan as far as content goes. It outlines the current conditions of our road and bridge system, as I mentioned before. Has the measures and targets related to the roads and bridges. And then it also goes through a fiscal capacity analysis, and then it lists all the projects that were submitted to us as part of the project solicitation. Chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 focuses on bicycle and transit in the region. Again, both of these have similar themes throughout them. We tried to lay them out in a similar way. So it goes over the current conditions of the system, overviews measures and targets, looks at fiscal capacity, and then has a list of the projects that were submitted to us for bicycle and transit categories. And then finally, we have a freight and aviation chapter that lists the current conditions, measures and targets, and fiscal capacity. Obviously, we do not have a list of projects. There weren't projects that were submitted to us for freight and aviation. So we just kind of talk about those in more generalities in that chapter. Those are the 4 main chapters that will be in the plan. We also have a number of appendixes that will be in there as well. I won't list all of them, but just for example, it will have like background on the fiscal analysis, background on the growth scenario, background on the model update, things of that nature, just to give anybody who wants to do a deeper dive into how the LRTP was developed, they can go into those appendices and get a more deeper dive into that. As far as the schedule goes, as I mentioned before, we are looking at having all those draft chapters posted out for public comment by next week. We'll open that public comment period. Per our public participation plan, we are required to have a 30-day public comment period. So that will close sometime in early October, which will allow us to present any of the comments that we have received to our committees at the October meetings, with the final comments being presented to the policy committee at their meeting on October 17th. We'll take the next few weeks after that to incorporate any of the comments that we received that we need to make any changes in any areas of the plan. We'll do that in those final weeks of October, early November. And that will allow us to have a final plan to present to the committees in November, with policy ultimately making the final vote on that at their November 21st meeting. So that's where we're at with the LRTP update. Happy to take any questions that you have.
This is Mike Ludwig. I had one question going back to your slide that showed the chapters and it had the aviation, freight and aviation. As far as projects, would it be as simple as listing just the terminal project at the airport? And I mean, that's a fairly major initiative. I would think that would be in the
Yeah, we do.
plan.
We do have that one in there. We do discuss that project in the chapter quite a bit. So that one's included.
Okay, thanks.
And we talk a little bit about some projects around the transload facility as well. But those are kind of the two major freight and aviation projects. But I guess what I intended to say was that we didn't have anybody actually submit us any projects in those categories, but we do discuss those two big projects. Thanks, Mike.
Other questions for Zach? Well, thank you, Zach. We will hopefully folks get a chance to review those chapters and follow along as we continue through this process. And now we have upcoming events with Z.
Yes, thank you. So we have quite a lot of webinars to highlight this month, but I think of notice on September 10th, we have one webinar on data and evaluation tools for safe routes to school. We also have a webinar about prioritizing safe speeds from the Vision Zero network. On September 17th, the League of American Bicyclists have a how to create complete streets webinar. And then two webinars on September 19th, one from People for Bikes, designing streets for safety, and one on just general transportation equity from the Governor's Highway Traffic Safety Bureau. For events, September 10th to 12th in Des Moines, we have the Iowa Streets and Roads Workshop. I think that's held by ISU. And then on September 24th up in Ames, the Iowa DOT has their Fall Traffic Incident Management Conference. Yep. So with that, happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you for all this information, Z. Do we have other items of interest?
Hey, Luis, this is John. One item of interest of the group, City of Des Moines. We received notice yesterday that we'll be receiving a Safe Streets for All implementation grant, the tune of about $13 million. And we were one of 70 municipalities or entities to receive an implementation grant in this cycle.
Congrats. I know it was a lot of work to put the application together and the plan and everything, and glad to see it's paying off. Was that what you asked for?
That's what we asked for. Yeah.
Oh, good. Good. So you'll be able to actually do what you asked for. Great. Glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Luis, I have one item. I just wanted to remind everyone about the CRP applications. Those are posted on our website right now. We sent an email out late last week with all the details and how to apply for those funds. So just wanted to remind everyone that those applications are out there. Gunnar will include some of those details in the post-meeting email, but just a reminder that the deadline for those is September 27th to get those applications in.
Thanks for that reminder. There are no other non-action items of interest to the committee. I'll highlight that our next meeting date is October 3rd at 9:30, and I will ask for a motion a second to adjourn.
This is Rudy. I'll move adjournment.
Jeff May, second.
Thank you, Rudy and Jeff. Any opposed? Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you.